Good,
Okay,
good.
but I guess my leg.
Yes, I do the same thing.
Right.
Most kids don't.
Are we starting bloopers?
Yeah, it's already rolling.
I'm
Yes,
not
you can check out my other videos on fixing things. You
school.
go to the grocery store? Oh my gosh, they got huge. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm talking to educators to find out what their educational journey is and ask them a few questions. Our teachers, our classroom teachers, our guidance counselors, they are truly what helps the school run. I'd like to introduce you to Andrea Repa. She's someone that I've known for a while. I respect her educational viewpoint. We talked a lot about education. So Andrea, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us a little bit about your educational journey.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Andrea Repa, and I've known Paul for, almost like about 10 years, actually.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because we actually know a lot of educators that we live near. And so we always have these conversations, but Paul's been someone that I've really looked up to because he's been an administrator for a long time. And I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So I went to the University of Akron for my undergrad and my master's. I was a K-3 elementary teacher for 17 years, and this is my second year as a high school counselor. So I made the jump from teaching first and third grades to now counseling high school students, which is interesting.
Yes. Two opposite ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah, but a lot in common.
Yes.
Yeah, they're still kids.
Kelly and I have talked a lot about the differences and similarities between elementary kids, middle school kids, and high school kids. And really, with her teaching elementary for so long, and with you teaching elementary for so long, the interesting thing is that when kids grow up and they become 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids,
Yeah.
they're just bigger kids. Their bodies are bigger, but they
Yes.
still have some of the same fears.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. And I see that as a counselor too, I feel like in high school they maybe try to project a certain persona, in front of their friends, but when they come to your office, you kind of get the real kid there. So yeah, it's kind of nice to, you're still working with kids. So it wasn't really a big jump for me.
Right. So let's talk first about what made you want to be a teacher.
So I think I was just that little girl, like a lot of teachers out there, that I was playing school when I was a kid. I didn't have electronics when I was a kid, obviously. So I was making worksheets, giving them to my brother and torturing him with those. So I always knew when I was younger. And then when I went to college, I actually took a different path, which we just talked about. I was a business marketing major and just kind of going with the flow with what my friends did. And then it was pretty close to graduation. I decided, no, I think I remember I want to be a teacher. So I stayed in college for almost 7 years for undergrad, and finally came out as an elementary school teacher. It was hard to get a job back then. It was 2002, and it was pretty competitive. But it was all about those connections that I made and relationships that you build with people along your journey. So luckily, those served me well along the way.
So then, just recently, you made the switch to go out of the classroom and help students a different way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects to this job. I don't even know where to start. When someone asks me what my responsibilities are as a high school counselor, so many things jump in my head. As far as my specific role in my department is, I'm taking on scheduling, which in a building of over 2,000 students at the high school, and just getting scheduling set up, it's really a big task, but it works well for a person who's type A and organized like I am. I take on weekend SAT administration, obviously working a lot with the social emotional learning, mental health aspect, which has obviously been huge lately. Just trying to work closely with the administrators. That's a huge part of this job, is working with so many different people in the building. Not only are you working a lot with students and parents, but you're working with the administrators just to try to make the culture and the environment better for everyone in the building.
So as you were teaching, or even before you were teaching, or before you became a guidance counselor, was there one person that really inspired you to want to become someone who helps kids every single day?
I don't know if there was one specific person. I know I moved around a lot as a kid,
Hmm.
and I actually first moved to Brunswick in sixth grade, and sixth grade was still at the elementary level at that time.
Hmm.
And my school counselor at that time, she was wonderful, and it was hard to move from. I moved from South Lorraine. I didn't even know where Brunswick was, and
Hmm.
to it was just a totally different environment, and she really helped me, so she always stood in the back of my mind. Funny thing, when I got my first teaching job in Brunswick, she was the counselor at that building then at Applewood, and she was my counselor when I was at Crestview, so that was like a sign to me. So I was looking for different avenues to get my master's degree, and honestly, counseling just seemed like a very natural progression for me. All kids go through difficulties in their childhood. And I went through a lot. And I feel like I had a little bit of counseling in my life always helped me. So I felt like that would be so awesome to pay back,
Hmm.
and do something for others. And it's exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
good. I can definitely hear in just the short, conversation we've had so far, and I can see how that has shaped you as a person
Mm-hmm.
and as an educator.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it's helped me evolve as a person and as a parent, as a wife. It really, as an administrator, you can leave your job at the door, but it really follows you in all aspects of your life,
Hmm.
which is, I think, can be a blessing in a lot of ways.
If you reflect a little bit, either in the past year or two as a school counselor, is there one or two events that really you remember vividly that either inspired you or a kid did something that really took your breath away?
What comes to my mind is all the special ed kiddos I've worked with. I have grown to love, students who are in special education, and just seeing them, you know, hit these milestones and work on their IEP goals and meet those IEP goals. There's just not one specific moment. It's just special education was not an aspect I really looked at when I
Hmm.
was going into education, but it's something I just fell in love with. And I loved, when I was a teacher, being in a co-taught classroom and having a co-teacher with me and building that relationship and working together. So again, just not one specific moment, but
Hmm.
just falling in love with those kids that I've had over through the years, and a lot of them that I still have a relationship with,
Yeah.
and some that I've seen at the elementary and that are coming up to the high school now, which makes me really excited.
Have you gotten to that point where you have students in high school that you had in your classroom?
Yes. And I keep my class pictures on my office door. And I like to embarrass them because some of them are in my alphabet. And, they don't want to see a picture of themselves from first grade and what they were wearing.
No.
But I love it. I love, like, we always say my kids. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
love seeing my kids on my door and having them and seeing them later. Even if they're not in my alphabet, just love seeing them in the halls. And I think it's cool for them to see me too sometimes. Sometimes I think some of them are like, why is she here?
Right.
They thought they'd never see me again,
Yes.
but
The other thing that I notice, being a middle school principal,
mhm,
is after I see them leave in eighth grade,
mhm,
if I see them again at graduation
yeah,
or if I'm visiting high school for something and I see them, it's like, oh my gosh, they got huge, and they have these dramatic
yeah,
changes. They're
yep,
6'3",
I know,
or they've gotten bigger, or they've grown more mature. It's really
right,
interesting to see that, just
yep,
their physical changes,
yep,
let alone their social, emotional, and
mhm.
maturity changes, which I'm sure you see a lot of.
Yeah, yeah, it's so interesting. And having those conversations, obviously, conversations in first grade as opposed to high school are so different.
Hmm.
And just to see how they've kind of turned out so far. And also, they're still on a journey. And where are they going to go? Like, it's cool to have been with them on their journey back in, most of them, first grade. And, they're kind of continuing down that journey, seeing where they're going after high school. There's so many options after high school, and just knowing what their journey is, and just excited for them to continue that.
Hmm. So we talked a lot about the positive things, the exciting things, the things that make you really want to come back every day for educators. But we're in this situation now. We all know, we've all heard so much about COVID. What is one of the most frustrating behaviors that you see in students, or the most challenging behaviors that you deal with in
hmm
schools?
So, I mean, obviously, mental health is so huge, and we are dealing a lot with attendance issues. So, I think just kind of sorting through the info and what's what, and who's dealing with what, and at what level. We want to be there to meet all of our students and give them what they need, but just trying to figure out offering services to the family. And there's so much more to that, like no one thinks about it, but insurance. And, a lot of these providers are doing, virtual visits and they're 6 weeks out or something like that. And our kids need help now. So it's frustrating when my scope of practice is limited in trying to refer out to services and feeling like you're hitting a brick wall because there's a lot of restraints on that right now.
Yeah. So what's one piece of advice that you would give to parents who are seeking some help for their child? We're not licensed therapists or anything like that. I wanted to give that disclaimer, but we are professionals in our field. What's one piece of advice that you would give to parents?
Don't wait until it's too late, right? When you start to notice that your child is going through something, I think a lot of parents are, let's just wait and see. They're just going through something. I think if they're pretty consistent and you're starting to have that gut feeling, contact your child's school counselor. Start there because we have those lists of resources. Also in the Brunswick City School District, we have student and family support specialists who do have that mental health background that are able to work with students as well. And, we kind of have some things in place that we can help families with, but we don't know what we don't know. With how many students we have in our district, it's really important for parents to be proactive and reach out to us so we can help sooner rather than later.
So that goes back to, if you've watched any of my other videos, conversations about communication. Would you also say that communication is key if you're going to help students or help your own child?
Definitely. I mean, as a counselor, as a school counselor, that's part of our job is talking to parents. I talk to parents as much as I talk to students, and I think it's important to build those relationships. At the high school, at Brunswick High School, your child has the same counselor 9th through 12th grade, so we develop those relationships with parents, and I feel like I do have a relationship with some of the parents I work with, and it's awesome. And, I've had some great success stories already so far, just working with families. So I think it is important to reach out.
You talked about really getting some joy out of helping students with special needs. Do you recall an event that really made your heart feel warm, that you really appreciated and made you say, that is why I became a guidance counselor? Or that is why I became a teacher?
Yeah. So I think seeing kids outside of school and having them get excited. I know you've probably, they can't believe you live outside of school, right? And do things outside of school.
You go to the grocery store?
Yeah. And obviously you don't get that behavior from high school students as much. But I can also think of my special ed students, going on the walk to support my students with Down syndrome. That really warms my heart every year. I look forward to that. Obviously, I haven't been doing that with COVID, but when you go and see those students outside of school and you show them you're supporting them, and the feeling they get from that is just awesome. And I have some great pictures and great memories from those events. But yeah, with the little ones, them having, seeing you outside of school and getting excited and being able to connect with their parents. I'm also really involved with my church in the community. It's so big, St. Ambrose. And so there's a lot of kind of families that I see through work and through church. And I love those connections as well. So I don't think it's like one specific thing, but I think it's just that overall sense of community. I live here, I work here, my parish is here. I'm just so involved, and it really does give you that sense of family and community.
You mentioned this a little bit before, but what do you think the toughest thing about COVID is from a high school guidance counselor's perspective?
Just when, students aren't really performing to their potential and getting them back out of that hole that they dig themselves in sometimes. Last year was interesting because some of our time was spent online. And that was hard for students. We talked to a lot of students who were sitting in their bed, not getting dressed, and I would tell students, I know if I sat in my bed and attempted to work, that wouldn't go very well, right? So last year was difficult. And then this year is a little difficult because, we still have kids that were in quarantine or had family members or they themselves had COVID and were out for a period of time. And when you're in 5, 6, 7 classes and you're put behind, it's really hard to dig yourself out of that hole. So working with students, and this is all a trickle effect of COVID, right?
Mhm.
So kind of just picking one thing, like, hey, we're not going to make everything great by next week. Let's pick 1 or 2 areas. Let's see. And just encouraging those kids. These kids that are coming to the high school, they're not really used to reaching out to teachers. You know, they just expect the teachers to know. And so what I've shared with them is, you know, your teachers may have 5 or 6 classes all day long. You have to reach out to them, you know, and they have the beauty of emailing their teachers. You and I didn't have that. We couldn't email a teacher. We had to go and physically talk to them.
Yes.
And, you know, that's nerve-wracking for a lot of kids. So I tell them, let's start small. Let's get a small goal. Let's pick one class that we know we can dig ourselves out of. Let's email that teacher. Let's tell her what's going on. A lot of times, you know, the kids are like, they don't want to know, or I don't want to tell them. And although I understand it, I think it's important for the teachers to kind of know what's going on with that student and have it come from them.
Right.
You know, so I always tell a student, you don't have to share everything, but maybe think about what you're comfortable with and share that with them. Because if they know your situation, they're going to work with you, right? And I feel like that gives them a little bit of hope, and it starts to dig them out slowly.
Right. To kind of summarize that, I would say communicate. Communicate with your teachers.
Right.
Number 2, advocate for yourself.
Yes.
Right. So as a young adult, whether you're 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, it's time to start advocating for yourself and realizing when you need help.
And isn't that an important skill for after high school? Whether they're going to college, trade school, workforce, you have to be able to speak up for yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. You know, you don't have your parents to rely on when, you know, after high school, when you're continuing on with whatever it is you're going to do in life. So these are important skills you're learning. So I tend to point that out as well.
Yeah, that's good. My final question for you is, if you were not able to be a school counselor or be in education, is there anything else that you enjoyed doing so much that you'd want to do it for a living?
Being a mom.
Oh, yes.
Being a mom, and I love interior design.
Oh, nice.
Like I could spend a day just at Home Goods, TJ Maxx, that sort of thing, looking around, Pinterest, and, you know, doing all that. Love that, especially with how much time we've been at home.
Right.
You know, it's kind of something I've always been interested. I'm not handy, however, like you.
Yes, you can check out my other videos on fixing things.
Yeah, but I think that's it. I love being a mom, you know, and it's hard to kind of balance. I work with teenagers during the day, and I come home and I have a teenager, and that is a whole other conversation.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Kelly and I have talked about that a lot because, you know, I started my career at a high school, and I taught high school science and chemistry for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I was an assistant principal at a high school for a long time, and then moved down to the middle school where I became the building principal at a middle school. But I picked up some skills and some tactics on how to deal with adolescents between 11 and 14 years old that I could use with my own kids. But it is interesting that when you come home and you're frustrated with behavior of a 13-year-old girl, and then you have to come home and deal with the same behavior, that's frustrating. So do you and your husband find that you kind of trade off? Because Kelly and I do that a lot. Like we'll trade off if we get frustrated with our own child. It's tough to step back and say, I need a break. Can you help me out with this?
You know what? We kind of don't do that. You know, I think we have different parenting styles. And Mike, if you watch this, I'm so sorry. I love you. But if you're an educator, you probably know Love and Logic.
Yes.
And it's just, Love and Logic is a very matter-of-fact, natural consequences way of thinking with your parenting. You know, I want to yell, but I know yelling's not going to get me anywhere. So I'm just very Love and Logic about how I try to handle my teenager. And, you know, Mike's not an educator. So he's trying the best he can. And I do think there are times where one of us is like so frustrated we have to walk away and the other one takes over. But I tend to think like I have more experience as an educator.
Right. You have lots of practice with other people's kids.
Yes. Right. Where you and Kelly are both educators, so you kind of know. So that's a little bit different too. It's interesting being married to someone who's in a completely different profession than you, and one of us works with kids and the other one doesn't.
Even saying that, I've gotten so frustrated that I have, lost it on kids, whether it's my own kids or students at my building.
Yeah.
I've lost it, and I've taken a step back. And I don't know about if you've ever done this, but I've had to go back to the student or maybe a parent and say, listen, I was so frustrated. I'm sorry about how I acted there. Let's try to mend that relationship. And I think that's important for kids to see that adults make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because they're learning as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, they are learning how to react to situations.
Definitely.
And they don't always react the correct way.
Right.
Most kids don't react the right way.
Right.
But
so we have to model.
That's our job, to model that.
To model, yeah. But that is why I don't ever want to be an administrator.
It is challenging sometimes.
It is. I'm sure. I watch it. I see it every day, and that's why I really like my role. But I do see my role as a gray area too, because you're also trying to do what's best for that kid. Where you go back and look at a situation, not that you were frustrated, but it's like, hey, we talked about this, but then I talked to my department chair and we talked about this and we're going to do this, So it's important to go back and let kids know that there are a lot of gray areas. And we always talk about in our department, every student has their own situation. We treat every student like the individual that they are. It's not really black and white for us.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. Every situation is unique.
Yes.
So you talk about your husband being a non-educator.
Yes.
Right. And, we all have friends that are non-educators.
Right.
What is one thing that you wish non-educators would understand about the educational field?
Just how hard we work outside of work. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people think, we do our job, we go home. And I think some people do, but a lot of times I can't sustain a task at work. So I save it for when I come home because I know I'll be able to do it uninterrupted and I can focus on it. Summer is a time where I think educators are most busy. I know when I was a teacher, I spent a lot of my summer planning for the year ahead because I didn't want as much stress during the year, right? So, and I know I can speak for an elementary educator that they are always trying to make the most fun and engaging and informative lessons they can with the ever-changing standards that we have in education. So we're always tweaking our lessons. And I remember as a teacher, I would lose sleep at night. Yeah, that lesson I had on this, I bet it would be better if I could buy pasta. And then you start a grocery list in your head.
Yes.
So it's like when you're a teacher, your brain never turns off. I don't feel like that as much as a counselor, being a counselor, but there are still a lot of tasks. Like I have learned since I've been at the high school, do not talk to me in the month of August. I'm very busy with scheduling. So my family,
suffers.
Yes. But I always look at it like August is a tough time. We're dealing with, and I'm sure no one would think about this, scheduling conflicts. And with our caseloads being very large, you come across some conflicts, which I'm still learning about. And I'm sure there's things I can do that I'm already thinking about for this upcoming August that are going to make my job easier. But my family just knows there's going to be certain times a year where I'm going to be, and luckily I don't have little kids anymore.
Yes.
It's so hard for educators with little kids. So I wish, parents and other people knew, our families are very important and our mental health is very important too.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And it's that whole saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't take care of our kids at home or our kids at school.
Well, that's a great segue. How do you fill your cup? Like, what are the things that you do that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I think I do a good job of it, to be honest. My department laughs at me. So if any of them are watching this, they're going to love it. I nap.
Oh, good.
I love naps. Like when you read stuff about how to take care of yourself and it says get enough sleep, not an issue with me.
Yeah.
Not an issue. I love sleep. For as girly girl as I am and, I care about clothes and all that, I love being outdoors. Like I like nature. So not this time of year. Right?
Yeah, it's cold. We're in the northern hemisphere here, so it's freezing cold and there's about a foot of snow outside.
Freezing cold and I walked here. I walked all the way here.
It was a far walk.
Far walk. But I love Cuyahoga Valley National Park is my place. Lake
Mhm.
Erie is my place. So I'm always hitting up like Edgewater, Huntington Beach. I'm I'm biking, so it's harder in the winter months.
Mhm.
So I sleep, I spend time outdoors. I scrapbook just like your wife.
Ah, yes.
I scrapbook like hell. I got my whole setup right now. I'm trying to exercise, trying.
That's always tough to find that time.
I like to walk. I walk my dog. I'm obsessed with my dog. So if anyone knows me, they know I'm obsessed with my mean little Chiweenie.
Dogs are fun. I do have a video coming up that shows the funny things that my dog has done. We'll have to watch that one.
Okay, I
It'll be a good
will.
one.
Okay, don't. Yeah, I only have mean clips of Cody doing, but he snuggles with me. He's my napping buddy.
Yes.
So, and just my husband, he's wonderful. My kids, they're okay. So
They frustrate us.
yeah,
right?
I mean, I have my moments where self-care could be better, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? But I think we're all trying our best to work on that. But I think I do okay.
Those are all the questions I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Wow. What inspired you to want to start talking to educators?
I am an extrovert, so I like talking to people and I like having conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish I had more time to do that.
Yeah.
Like when I'm in my building, I appreciate the conversations I have with my teachers. Sometimes I get bogged down in my office and I've got to answer a bunch of emails
Right.
or go to meetings, go to district meetings, go to building meetings. It's a lot of being
Yeah.
pulled in different directions.
Yes.
To finally circle back and answer your question about why I wanted to do this is because I see awesome things every day with my teachers, with my wife, with
Mm-hmm.
my friends, and we talk about it all the time. But I don't think there's a place where people know about these conversations, about the wonderful things that teachers and guidance counselors and administrators do. And I want to share that with my viewers and everyone out here who's watching this. So to hear about the things that warm your heart and the things that you love to do, those are the conversations I love to have. So I just wanted to share it with people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positive things going on in schools. There's a lot of frustration and there's a lot of anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
Stress is a big thing. Although sometimes I get bogged down at school talking about the negative things, I do want to talk about the positive things too. So that's why I wanted to start this series with teachers talking about some of the great things that they do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you for joining us. I want to thank Andrea for joining me today. And if you have any questions about anything we talked about, or you have suggestions, or just things that you'd like to see in the next video, please write them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. You're going to be famous.
Oh, can't wait.